Welcome back. Today we've got one of my most favorite quilters in the world. She is the most talented, most incredible, the most fabulous Angie Taylor. Hi, Angie.
Hi, John. Lovely to see you in the flesh.
I know, it's so weird with lockdown. I haven't seen you in so long. It must have been, what, May last year?
No, around September when I picked my quilts up.
That's right, yes. Gosh, but it's just even that. We used to see each other twice a week.
I know, at least.
Very, very different times now. So a lot of people may not know who you are. So Angie, tell us a bit about you.
Well, I'm Angie Taylor. I'm 65. I have been quilting for over 50 years, but not seriously until about 30 years ago. I've always sewn because my great-grandmother was a court dressmaker. My grandmother obviously sewed, my mum sewed, and in the end I sewed. I used to make little outfits for my Cindy dolls when I was about 9, 10. Then I really got into knitting because when I was about 16, because my friend at work was expecting a baby, so that was my passion. So I have a lot of wool. Then I got into crochet, and then I sewed clothes, and I made all the curtains for my first house, and I've continued to do so in all the houses I've lived in and done upholstery. It's really when my little girl started school that I went to quilting groups, and it really opened the world up to me, and this is my addiction now.
Well, there are worse addictions to have.
I'm not sure they're any cheaper.
Couldn't possibly comment. You mentioned having quilting groups because you run the fabulous Hemel Quilters group as well, don't you?
I do. When I first started, I went to a little group run by a lady called Frances Howard. We were in a very cold, very windy scout hut up in Bovingdon. And then we moved to the library. And then I started discovering patchwork shops. And that opened me up to joining Hemel Quilters, who was run by Sheila Fryer. Unfortunately, she had a very nasty stroke. And that's when I took over running the group, gosh, about 12 years ago now. Sadly, she died last year. But yeah, we're still going.
Good.
And, obviously not at the moment.
Everything's on hold right now, isn't it?
Everything's on hold. And I've been to various other little groups. Of course, the wonderful quiltering, which I think we really should review when we can go out again, even if it's every other month.
No, we must do something. And I think as well, the lockdown has shown us all how important spending time with one another is, and how without it, how much we've lost.
Miss the camaraderie and the sharing of work and all the naughtiness, the chocolate, the naughty jokes, and the occasional glass of wine.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
When you're isolated, it really makes you realise how much you've taken for granted. The hugs and the kisses and the giggles and the friendliness of it all. Yes, so when we can get back together again, I'm going to embrace life. It's going to be like one long quilting party.
But that's an important thing. So is that what lockdowns taught you? Is that what you want to change going forward?
Yes. I used to go out a lot, as well as quilting out with other friends, you know, ladies who lunch. I'm lucky to be in that position. And going to quilting shops and helping ladies choose their fabric, and yeah, I just miss all that. And I used to teach as well, and I've obviously taught at your retreat, the Stack and Wax.
Well, you taught me as well.
I gave you the addiction, didn't I?
You're an incredible teacher. You're really, really talented. And every time you and I meet, I always say, "Where's the book? Where's the book? Where's the book?" Because it's, you know, it's the thing that I find is quite it's not disappointing. I can't find I just know how much talent you have, and I know I've seen your work,
Thank
and
you.
I've seen hundreds of your pieces, and you are incredibly talented, so good. And I just wish that that knowledge could be imparted to as many people as possible. Like so many like you, it's just that you've done it for love and you've really enjoyed your craft, but it's not something that, yes, you've shared it with people as you go along in a class, in a room, and you do that willingly and happily. It just, I wish there was some sort of firm way of being able to pass that on to people, because us new quilters, we want to learn everything possible.
Yes. I mean, I do enjoy teaching, but I think once you start doing patterns and writing books, you tend to lose the sewing side. I mean, when did you last sew something that wasn't for a television program or
I was talking to Andrew last night. I've not sewn anything for myself since November 2019.
Oh,
It's serious, you don't, because when you do it for a job, everybody just thinks, oh, I'll have a quilt shop, it'll be fabulous, I'll have so much fabric and time. No, doesn't
yeah.
happen.
Well, I've got a quilt shop fabric wise.
Oh, are we gonna? Now, normally I go to the end of this, the podcast for this. How big is your stash?
Well, as I say to my husband, I haven't got a stash. I'm a curator of a fabric museum.
Darling, your museum is quite coveted.
Oh, well, it's probably fill the British Museum at least.
But at least you keep it in one space, all in your house, which is good. You haven't gone into storage just yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of wool and some dressmaking fabric in the garage.
Now, you belong to a couple of other quilting groups as well. Tell me about those.
Well, there's only Redbourne quilters. We managed to meet up in the summer in the walled garden doing our social distancing. There was no sewing done, but it was just nice to get together with our group. We normally meet in the church hall and sew for 2.5 hours. And occasionally when there's half term, because there's a toddler group there, we have an all day sewing, which is lovely.
It
and
is.
I did actually teach them a bag.
Good.
They wanted to do something else, but of course then this virus came along and spoilt the whole thing.
It's scary, isn't it? It's really sad. But we're trying to make it all different. Do you do any sort of Zoom classes or anything like that? Does that work for you?
I haven't done, though I am doing the retreat with you at the end of the month and the ladies. That'll be lovely. It's probably because it's in the evening. You have to feed the beast, the husband. No, he is very good at cooking, but yeah. I've done a couple of Zoom meetings, but no, I've just tended to lock myself in my room and put the music on and have a glass of wine and sew. Try being to finish things. I think this virus has spurred me on to finish things. So the 3 quilts that you quilted for me, which are here somewhere, have all got the binding on. The labels have now been done, so they will be attached and I will be sitting sewing the binding down in the evenings.
Well, I have to say, you are the lady I tell everybody about who has your wonderful journal of every quilt project you've ever started. And you've got columns of all the different stages that it's in. Tell me about that journal, because that is something that a lot of people have asked about.
Well, when I first started quilting and actually sort of producing pieces, they weren't very big and they were learning pieces. They started mounting up a bit and my fabric stash started growing. So I thought you should really write things down. And I always make an effort to document a quilt as I'm making it, because as we all know, they can go in a cupboard for a very long time before they're finished. And if you do all your notes and everything, you can just pick it up. Because I've spoken to so many ladies who've gone, I started this and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. So I've helped them sort that out. So if you actually keep notes as you're going along, when you go back to it, you go, oh yes, read through your notes and you can pick it up from there. Label things, put them in bags.
Well, you're the one who got me collecting everything into bags, and every project that I have, every kit, every pattern, everything all goes in a bag or a box, and it's got the pattern, the fabric, the thread. If I've started something, if I've got notes, all goes into one bag. And it is the most brilliant thing because, as you say, I've got UFOs. I've only been doing this 6 years. I've got UFOs going back 6 years. No clue what they are. None. No clue. So it's a bit of a waste not having them all put together, and it just saves so much time.
I mean, if you put all your threads and everything together in the book, you know that you're not going to use that thread for something else, because 9 times out of 10, when you come to finish it and you've used the thread for something else, you're not going to be able to get that thread or that extra bit of fabric to finish the quilt off.
Especially when you're doing it 3-4 years later.
Ah, yes, yes.
Who's your sewing inspiration? Do you have one?
Not in quilting as such. I would have to say that my mum, I suppose, was my inspiration. Though she admired my work, she didn't really like patchwork. Same as she loved knitting, but she didn't like Fair Isle. It's just a thing. So many people have been an inspiration. There's no one person. I mean, obviously Frances Howard started me, and Sally Radway was a good teacher over at Quilt Basics. I did a few courses at Hemel Hempstead College, and Frances did those, but she retired, so Faye Allwood took over. And yeah, they were inspirational to start me, but just meeting other ladies that sew and do different things. And I really feel sad that my daughter shows no interest whatsoever in sewing or knitting or anything. I've tried to encourage her, but no. And they don't do it at school anymore, which I think is very sad. They don't even know how to sew a trouser hem up or sew a button on. They'll just throw them away and buy another pair from Primark.
Well, you see, the thing as well is it has become a throwaway culture where everything you can buy in Primark is, you know, £2-3 for a pair of trousers or a t-shirt, and it's going to take you an hour and a half to fix it. You know, it has become that throwaway culture.
Yeah, you've been inspirational.
Me?
Another way, yes.
Why? How? How on earth could I have inspired you?
Well, I've loved you. I've loved watching you embrace this with such enthusiasm, and all your lovely patterns, and helping you with that wonderful Bargello project.
That was incredible. But you do know that you were the only reason that this shop exists.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, it is.
Sorry you're having to work such long hours.
I have never loved anything more. But honestly and truly, you were the reason this happened, because you and I went to go and look at a second-hand long arm for you.
Yes, I know.
And then when we were driving home, it was in the car. Andy said, "Why don't you just buy a long arm?" I'm like, "Because we don't have the money." He's like, "We can find the money." And then a shop was born. It's just extraordinary.
Yes, well, you know, that's lovely. I have to say I'm a little bit
Angie,
jealous.
it's all your fault. It's all your fault.
I know, blame me.
Oh, now I'm looking over your shoulder at these incredible pieces. Now I can see, now I jokingly tell everybody that that is my quilt. That beautiful fossil American Beauty you've got there. Please tell everybody about that, because it's one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever seen.
That was Duxford, year before last. Kaleidoscope Books. Now I have enough books, really. But I saw this one. It's Carl Hench. I believe Nettie had the book. And I thought, oh, they look lovely. And they were all lovely bright colours like I use, obviously, because Tula Pink was involved in it. Very inspirational. Young lady, yay, get the youngsters into this. And I had one store was selling off like the samples, fabric sample books that you get for boutiques, and they were all graded from light to dark. So I found several of those, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll grade that round from light to dark. But of course, when I'd used those, I then had to raid my stash and go to the lovely Roxanne, who has a fabulous selection of boutiques, to get the light and dark grading. So I've done 8 so far, and I keep laying them out to wonder Do I do any more or just leave
Yes.
it at that? No, I've probably done 9 actually.
No, 16.
I know it's your quilt. I'll try and get it finished before I pop off.
Now tell me about everything else, because you've got a love of miniature quilts, don't you?
Yes, my little miniature quilts up there. I've done quite a lot, but they've been given away for, I did one for lovely Irene's 70th and for my friend Julia's 60th, the Storm at Sea.
But now talk to me about the rest there. You've got that gorgeous double wedding ring there with your signature hair on it. Show me that.
This is the one that I started at the retreat that we could do.
Yes.
Of course, I've fiddled about with the pattern, changed the applique design, and then thought, because I'd made it bigger, I've got to put different borders on. So I changed it and put the hairs on with, well, this is it. It needs to be sandwiched and quilted, which I shall do. And
now, is that the one that you did a totally different fabric in every single one of those rings?
yes, it's all scraps from my floral stash. There's liberties and all sorts.
But literally, there are no 2 pieces of fabric in there that are the same outside of the same.
Not in the same rings. There are duplicates within the quilt top, but not on the thing. And of course, I love my hairs, so it should be quite fun to quilt.
Because you've got a long arm frame behind you there as well.
Well, it's as you can see, it's used for storing quilts on. It very rarely gets used because you can only do like all over designs in lines backwards and forwards. Hence, I would like this replaced with a long arm.
Do it!
I know, I should.
Liz and Pete at Handy Quilter, they're amazing. And talk to me about that stack and whack there, because you did a totally different technique for stack and whack on this one.
But this was a piece of just blue and white. It was a white background with different shades of blue roses. And this was only my 2nd stack and whack. It's been sitting tacked and ready to quilt, but I think it needs special quilting because there's a lot of blank areas. And this had a border down the side of the fabric. So I did the quilt and there wasn't enough border fabric to go all the way around. So I designed a different, the Celtic applique to fill in the gaps.
Well, I think whenever you have, because you and I sorted out Nicola's stash when she sadly passed away.
Yeah.
And I think for me, certainly, I'm very much onto pushing people to do UFOs. The UFO thing, it's really important to make sure you stay on top of them. And that's why I think your book idea is genius. It's a really good idea. So according to your book, how many UFOs have you got at the minute?
I have about 23, but a couple of them are marked down as not worth finishing. Well, they're either from too long ago, though I did cull all my early stuff that I did because I thought I've moved on a lot. And what I've also found, if you leave quilts too long and you go back to them, you realise, oh my God, I've got so much better since then. And though it is nice to finish it, because personally, all my quilts, I love the fabric and I love the quilt, so I have finished them. But you think it really shows that you've started in one place and finished in another. But I think that's a quilt history, isn't it? But some pieces that I've done at workshops and things like that, I think, is it worth the effort? But I have used a lot of orphan blocks and things that I didn't think that I wanted to make a quilt out of. And though they're okay, they're good, they're not rubbish. I've made lots of Linus quilts. I have a very large bag of Linus quilts.
That's wonderful. It's such an amazing
joy to people. I mean, I did one years ago with horse fabric, and it went to a little girl of about 13, and sadly she died. And her mum actually sent me a letter thanking me for her quilt. She always wanted to ride but couldn't because of her illness. And she said the quilt brought her so much joy.
Oh. But you see, to me, quilting is about love and all the love that we're able to share with people. And you're doing that with strangers, and your Linus quilts carry on, and they do bring joy, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's why these charities, I think the more of them, the better. It's just an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yes. And it means that you can enjoy sewing and creating something that you know is going to be treasured, and it's not going to clutter up the house. It's going to someone who will love it and remember their child with it, which is very sad, but at the same time it's very nice.
And it's a vile situation, but you're making it that little bit nicer to be able to bring them some joy in that time. Oh, what we've gone to a morbid place now.
The morbid place now.
Tell me about your favorite fabric designers. You mentioned Tula Pink earlier.
I don't have a fabric guru. I very much like my taste in music and everything in my life. If I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. And there's beautiful fabric out there from every designer.
It's true. It really is.
And I must admit, I'm a bit of a traditional girl in everything. I like my traditional quilts. I'm not into contemporary. I mean, I was a dancer when I was young. Really didn't like contemporary dance. I don't like contemporary buildings and furniture. I really should have been born in the Georgian era, I think, with all the modern things that I've got now. If I can go back in time with my baninas and all my fabric and everything, time travel, that's what I need.
So having done this for so long, what would you be your top tip for new quilters? Don't
give up. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Like when I started knitting, I bought a 3-ply pattern with 16 rows of pattern. And Steve laughed. He said, "You'll never do that." We weren't married at the time. Yeah, and he lived to tell the tale. My mum laughed and said, "You'll never do it." And I sat in my room because I know how to knit and purl, but I couldn't unpick. There was a lot of swearing. Then it went across the room so many times. But in the end, something just clicked. And I didn't look back. Same with quilting. And I would say, don't give up. Don't be disheartened. And listen to other people. And there are a few rules, but there are no quilt police. If you come across a lady that's a quilt policeman, walk away. Try and seek out like-minded people that are going to encourage you. Whatever you create, you created with love and effort. And if it doesn't match up to other people's standards or they don't like the colours, tough. It's what you made, it's what you wanted. And that at the end of the day, it's what you want, not what anybody else wants.
And to be fair, it's not for them anyway.
No.
What's been your biggest regret in quilting?
When I discovered EPP at the age of about 13, my school friend, Nan, showed her how to do these hexagons. We thought, oh, this is good. So I did loads of hexagons in all different fabrics from my mum's scraps. There was brocades and velvets and cottons and God knows what. And being a bit of a hippie in those days, I made myself a hexagon patchwork skirt, which was great. And I wish there'd been groups and things that I could have gone forward and started quilting earlier. But obviously ladies like Amy Ems and that have been quilting and they tried to keep it going, but it really died a death. I should think in the 30s, in this country anyway. And yeah, it was ticking along, and then Laura Ashley came along and tried to revive it with all her little flowery fabrics and everything. But it wasn't really, I suppose, till the late 60s, early 70s that quilting started to become popular again, but not as much as it is today, of course. And I just hope that young people, I don't know how we're going to do it you know, do it online like you're doing, but then they won't be searching this out. There's got to be a way of getting the message across without it being, you know, our insular group as we are quilters.
It's very interesting you say that, and sorry, we're segueing off a bit there. I do think a lot more younger people are coming in, because before lockdown, I certainly, and I love it, my average age of my customer was in their 60s. Of course, you know, you and I have a good friend who's 105, and she comes in every now and then as well. But I'm finding now a lot more ladies in their 30s and 40s are joining us. So I think it is slowly but surely picking up, but it's one of those things, I think we're just going to have to keep working at it. And Instagram, there's a huge following on Instagram of quilters and things, and it is coming back. It just needs that nurturing. And I think it's trying to find the balance between, as you say, those few rules being followed and avoiding the dreaded quilt police, to be able to encourage and nurture and get people doing it, even if it isn't going to be technically 100% to what's demanded by certain people. You've got to be able to start somewhere, because nobody starts off being excellent at it. But I do think it's coming. It is coming.
Good. I hope I live long enough to see lots of young girls. I mean, really young girls. They're not taught to sew at school. I mean, my daughter's an example. She's just not interested.
It is,
you know, it's like Emma's little girl. She's doing wonderful things, and she's 9 now, 9, 10.
Yeah.
So there are
that old.
There are younger people out there encouraging their children to sew, which is good.
And it is, and I think it's
grandchildren.
It takes time. It really does take time to rebuild it, and it's a lot of work. And it's just being able to nurture and keep it going. I think it just takes a lot of time. And look at all the ladies that encourage you to do it. And yes, in your 30s and 40s, there were just a lot more people doing it. But I think as well, it speaks a little bit in a way about society, because a lot of, rightly or wrongly, a lot of younger people seem not to hang out with older ladies. And for myself, it's the highlight of my week, being able to spend time with women in their 60s and 70s. I love it, mainly because you women are so filthy. It's wonderful.
I know, we are.
Maybe it's just the group I hang out with. But honestly, I've never laughed, and I've never been able to talk through problems as well as I have with you ladies. And you're just phenomenal. And that's why, for me, this is why this podcast is so important, because I want people to see how amazing you all are. And hopefully that will encourage them to go and seek out a neighbor or a friend, or your mom's friend, auntie down the road. It's just, that's becoming more of a society in that way.
Yeah, I mean, maybe lockdown will teach us something. I hope so, but I have no hope the world will be a different place. It may be slightly, but I think everybody will just slip back into the old ways when ignoring old people and people that have got skills to pass on. I mean, years ago, women used to be revered for their needlework skills, whether it was embroidery or sewing and I think that all sort of went to the wall, certainly after the war. And I think a lot of ladies probably in the early 50s made their lovely flared dresses and everything. We were still taught at school, but I think, it's now looked upon as something you do. It's a hobby. And I don't think people realise the passion and the skill that all us ladies and a lot of you gentlemen now, what goes into making a quilt. It's not just fabric, and men joke and they say, they buy yards of fabric, cut it up and then put it back together again. Well, there's a lot of maths and accuracy in sewing your seams and putting colours together. So there's lots of skills involved in making a quilt. And I don't think that's realised by people who don't make quilts, if you know what I mean.
I think the first time you make a quilt or something, you certainly realise just how hard it is. But I do wonder, you've raised a very interesting point there, that it's in the 50s, everybody would make their own clothes and would do all of that. And I wonder whether nowadays, specifically, the mass production of clothing specifically for next to nothing, you've got masses of abuses against people in developing countries being paid pittance and working like crazy and getting terrible illnesses working with these terrible chemicals, you do wonder whether we didn't have that facility, whether people would make their own, and then it would expand that little bit more as well.
Possibly, but years ago it was economical to make clothes because sewing patterns and fabric and that sort of thing wasn't that expensive. It was cheaper than going to a shop to buy something. But now the Primarks and the mainstream clothing industry, as you say, exploits the poorer parts of the world. And, you know, sewing patterns and fabric have got very expensive. It's not cheaper to make your own clothes now.
No. But even the, you know, crafters don't get paid what they want to. When you work in Teller, you get paid a tiny sum of money to spend hours of work preparing quilts, driving to and from your appointment, spending half a day doing the filming. In some cases, you're being paid £2 an hour for a show. And if you look at the amount of time you spent on your quilts, if you tried to sell that, it would be £2,000-3,000. No one's going to pay that, and they make fun of you. You only have to look at the blog posts about me with the wonderful world of crafting, saying that a quilt was £2,000. But if you look at the number of hours that go into something like that, I think the crafting world itself needs to start respecting how much things cost and actually sticking to those prices. Because if you sold one at £2,000 as opposed to 10 at 200, you know, you at least then stand a chance of making your money back.
Well, when I made my friend's 25th wedding ring quilt, I hand quilted that, and it took me 3 hours to do the center and an hour and a half to do the melons. And I kept a note of the hours and the cost of the fabric and everything. And even if you paid yourself minimum wage, that came out at £3,500.
Exactly. There's a lady in America who does hand quilted pieces for people, and she charges $20,000 a quilt for a king size quilt. She does 3 a year, and she's got a waiting list for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Americans are more willing to pay because of the Amish quilts and the Mennonites and that. They held on to their quilting heritage more than we did in this country.
They're beautiful.
And all the Durham quilts, and you know, the Victorian ladies used to make those crazy quilts and then embellish them with all the embroidery because fabric was so precious. You used every scrap.
Every scrap.
Every scrap.
Bit like you.
No, I did sort my scrap basket.
Have you got your basket there? Because my favorite accessory of yours is your scrap basket. That's a different one. You've got one as well, which is like a proper picnic basket when you're picking berries from a field.
Oh no, I put them all into this big one and sorted them out and got rid of the really tiny little pieces.
Come on, let's tip it towards us. Let's see what's in there. Oh, I love it.
Lots of fabric.
I love it. But that's such a nice way of being able to do it because we do have those scraps and pieces, all of us. I've never seen that cushion.
Well, you have. I did them when I got my shaker chair.
Gosh.
That's a triple wedding ring.
That's beautiful.
Double wedding ring. And I've got your from the retreat.
Oh wow, my crazy patchwork.
That's the big one.
That is very clever. So what is next for you in your quilting journey?
I mean, I have designed quilts, but they've all been given away, like my friend's 25th and 30th wedding anniversary quilts. And I did one for my son's friend, who's now been married 5 years.
How?
And so, you know, most of these are sort of based on someone else's design, and then I'll change it, like with borders and things. I must show you this one. This is my design.
Oh, that's lovely.
This is Elliot. He was a stained glass window dragon with a teddy bear. You can see the teddy bear.
Oh, that's so sweet.
These little pinwheels were all scraps left over. They were 1 inch triangle bits. left from this star quilt. Now you can see it better in those colours. So all these pieces you trim off bits, and then I made the little pinwheels for that one.
It's incredible. And I just love the fact you've reached over and yet another king-size quilt has been dragged out, and the offcuts of that have made a baby quilt for someone else.
Oh, there's loads and loads. You know, one stack and whack in the other room, and there's the other stack and whack with all the little bits left over from the strips. I cut those into smaller stack and whack, set them on point with plain squares.
Perfect.
That used up all the fabric in the border. I literally had about a handful of tiny scraps that went in the bin left from 2 quilts, so that's good.
Love it. So Angie, have you got a message for new quilters?
Yes, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Go for it. Life's too short.
Darling, I cannot thank you enough for your time. As always, I've loved talking to you.
That's been lovely. Nice to actually talk to someone other than my husband.
I just hope we can all see each other again really soon.
Yes. Well, we all need to keep on sewing, and then we're going to have one big show and tell, and it's going to be a big show and tell because a lot of ladies are producing a lot of things, as am I, and finishing things off. So we should all feel very pleased with ourselves. Well, I'm just finishing off the applique border on my latest quilt. It's all pinned in place. It's got to be ironed down, and then I can sew it, put it on, and that's another quilt top that needs quilting.
Well, we'll clear that frame off and get you quilting. It'll be brilliant.
Okay, lovely.
Darling, stay safe. See you all soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.